No one in the town of Arrel understood rain the way Mira did. When the sky grew too heavy and let its freight fall, most people saw only puddles or inconveniences. Mud that sucked at boots, rivulets that coaxed worms from the earth, sudden interruptions of errands. Mira, however, saw rain as a migration of shining messengers. She had learned to tip her chin back and keep her eyes half-lidded so that the drops landed like cool fingertips against her cheeks. She would greet them the way one greets street musicians, with brief attention and silent gratitude. That habit dated to her 6th birthday, when her grandmother Leary told her the story of the rain memory pools, hidden hollows in forgotten places where water gathered after wandering the skies. Every drop, Leary said, preserved the last smile it touched before releasing itself. When enough droplets meet in a basin, she whispered, their stored smiles bloom into images on the surface, like ghost flowers of happiness as delicate as soap film. Watch closely, and you can see the echo of joy itself. It had sounded like bedtime nonsense, yet a seriousness in Leary's eyes made the tale impossible to discard. So Mira kept close watch whenever a storm passed, looking for any pool that seemed to shimmer differently, any surface that might hold not a reflection of clouds, but the soft curve of someone's lips. As the years accumulated like petals pressed inside a book, other things changed. Arrel's reservoir dwindled. Rainfall came less often, and when it did, the ground, cracked with thirst, swallowed most of it before puddles could linger. Mira's classmates fixated on scholarships, city jobs, or escape plans. Her grandmother's memory frayed, the way old ribbons fade, until their dyed colour leaks into surrounding cloth. Yet even after Leary sometimes forgot where the tea canister was kept, she never forgot the rain memory pools. When Mira visited, Leary would ask, "Have you found it yet, child?" Mira always smiled, answering, "Not yet, but I'm still looking." She never admitted that she wasn't sure what she was looking for anymore, a shimmering vision, or merely a purpose that made her remain in a drying town. On the evening the new train line opened, promising easier departures for anyone who desired bigger cities, a strange yellow thunderstorm rolled in. Lightning stitched the clouds in crooked patterns, but scarcely any thunder growled after. The air smelled metallic, as though someone were unspooling copper wire in great lengths above them. Mira stood on her porch, holding a ceramic bowl that had once belonged to Leary's mother. She carried it outside whenever rain threatened, not to collect water for practical use, though Arrel could certainly have used the extra, but because she liked the image of dozens of raindrops converging inside that little basin, telling their combined secret stories under the surface. During the months of drought, the bowl remained bone-dry, yet she never skipped the ritual. It felt like knocking politely on the door of a house that hadn't been occupied for years, just in case the owner had come home quietly. The first drops of the yellow storm were fat and warm. They plinked against the bowl, releasing a sound like muted bells. Mira thought about the possible smiles travelling inside them, perhaps a mother uplifting a toddler under a veranda in another country, perhaps two elderly friends clinking cups inside a memory-dense cafe. Rain cared nothing for borders. It could have tasted a grin in Cairo at breakfast and descended hours later upon a desert plain near Arel by dusk. Even as she imagined these journeys, Mira saw the rainfall struck more heavily toward the eastern outskirts, where abandoned cotton fields lay like parchments spread to dry. An odd yearning tugged at her. Maybe tonight a pool would form out there, in the lowest creases between ridges of hardened soil. She set the bowl on the porch railing, pulled on her old slicker, and set off. The walk took longer because she paused often, head tilted, letting drops strike her eyelids so she could guess at the hidden smiles they carried. She believed she could differentiate them. Sharp, cold drops from high altitude seemed to hum with the laughter of mountaineers. Slower, erratic splashes felt like the uncertain smiles of new lovers, hesitant yet eager. It was a private synesthesia of sensation and narrative. By the time she reached the cotton fields, the sky had bruised violet. Flash after flash illuminated the rows, revealing ragged bowls long spoiled by neglect. And there, in a shallow depression near an uprooted irrigation pipe, water had gathered into a pond the size of a wagon wheel. That was unusual. Ground this porous rarely held surface water even for minutes. Yet the pool glimmered steadily beneath the flickering lightning. Mira knelt beside it, her knees sinking slightly. She expected to see only the reflection of clouds lit from within, but the surface remained oddly still, unbothered by the continuing rain. It was like gazing into a pane of smoked glass suspended outdoors. As she leaned closer, shapes formed. They weren't reflections, the angle was wrong, and the contours changed independent of her movements. A child's grin, missing front teeth. A baker dusted in flour, cheeks puffed mid-laughter. An old sailor's weather-carved mouth tilting in wry amusement. Each smile rippled in and out, dissolving into another. Mira forgot the rain's cold tap on her spine. She realized she was witnessing the bloom Leary had promised. Condensed happiness, refracted through countless droplets, whose memories now mingled in the shallow cradle of a forgotten field, or soon fused with a more urgent emotion. Sorrow. Because, as Mira watched, she recognized people she knew. There was Mrs. Denholm, the retired teacher who had recently died. Her faint, tired smile had appeared once at the small art show Mira hosted at the town hall. There was Jalen, Mira's childhood friend, grinning mischievously the day they'd stolen peaches. And there, impossible but unmistakable, was Mira herself, perhaps aged 10, sunburned nose crinkled in delight as she held a stray kitten. Each time a familiar smile surfaced, it shimmered only seconds before blending into anonymity again. The pool was not a keepsake album one could flip at leisure. It was a restless kaleidoscope, offering glimpses before sweeping onward. The realization struck. If enough of Aryl's smiles were trapped here, then maybe other local drops had converged as well, pooling their treasures in this unlikely place. The storm had created a temporary archive of the town's brightest moments. And as quickly as the pond formed, it would likely sink away, and with it, the images. She had to share it. Leary deserved to witness what she'd believed in for decades, but her grandmother's house lay across town, and the rain might stop, the soil drink the pool before they could return. Mira took out her phone to record, yet hesitated. Would pixelation translate the feeling of watching living memories shimmer? Probably not. Even in high definition, the miracle might flatten into novelty. She imagined skeptics dismissing it as edited footage. She imagined herself years later, doubting her own recollection. The only certainty was the immediacy of experience. She needed people here, now. She started with neighbors closest to the fields. At first they resisted. Rain still fell, and the reputation of the flats as snake-infested persisted. But Mira's urgency cracked their hesitation. Within 15 minutes, she led a damp procession of 9. Old Mr. Casby with a cane, 2 teenagers who'd been loitering outside the shuttered mall, a mother in house slippers clutching her baby. Each new arrival approached the water's edge and fell silent. One teenage girl sobbed when she saw her late father's lopsided grin flicker across the surface. Even the infant seemed captivated, arms stilling in mid-wave as if they too recognized something fundamental. Some watched with wonder, others with grief, but all shared stillness, linked like candles cupping the same flame. Word travelled faster than the rain withdrew. Phone calls propagated. Curiosity overcame the weather's inconvenience. By 10:00 p.m., nearly 50 people encircled the basin. They formed natural lanes so everyone could approach and kneel, taking turns. They spoke in hushed tones, negotiating space as though in a sanctuary, and though the pool's diameter remained modest, no one complained. Somehow the water adjusted, The more eyes that peered in, the more smiles appeared simultaneously, layering into a luminous tapestry. It was as if the droplet memory sensed the hunger of the crowd and unfurled additional petals of stored happiness. When Lyri arrived, chauffeured by a neighbour, because Mira lacked a car, Mira held her elbow, guiding her through the clustered silhouettes. Cold rain glazed Lyri's thin hair to her scalp, but she paid no mind. At the rim, she knelt so abruptly Mira feared her knees would split. Yet Lyri remained steady, gaze anchored to the water. "I told them," she murmured, not to Mira but to the ripples themselves. "I told them you remembered." Under the shifting phosphorescence, her face regained the sturdiness Mira recalled from childhood, the expression of someone who'd waited out winters and wars. Mira watched as her grandmother's own youthful smile, a version Mira had never seen in life, blossomed on the surface, an echo from decades prior, stored in some raindrop that had kissed Lyri's lips long before Mira was born. Lily's hand fluttered to her mouth, stunned at meeting her own long-vanished joy. All miracles carry a tremor of loss. Around midnight, the clouds thinned. The rain slowed to sparse pinpricks. The pool's perimeter began to shrink, edges retreating like receding cuticles. People shifted anxiously, as if told visiting hours were ending, but they still had goodbyes unsaid. Someone suggested digging a trench to preserve the water, but the idea felt wrong, almost violent. This phenomenon was gift, not possession. Another proposed scooping the water into jars. Yet, would the smiles survive separation? Or did the pool's wholeness enable the bloom? Uncertainty stilled their hands. They settled for watching, whispering farewells when favoured images surfaced. Occasionally, a cheer rose when two people recognised the same captured grin simultaneously. Mira worried most about her grandmother, conscious of her thinning stamina, but Lyri sat straight, lips moving in silent conversation with the shimmering water. When at last the pool was no bigger than a dinner plate, Lyri stirred, reaching into her pocket. She withdrew a tiny glass vial, no larger than a thimble, something she once used to store medicinal oil. Untwisting its cap, she dipped it quickly, catching a few teaspoons of the fading miracle. No one stopped her. In fact, the crowd parted to let her. The pool reduced further, then soaked away, leaving only a darkened stain in the soil. And just like that, the field was an empty place again, holding only the hush of after rain. The townsfolk drifted home carrying complicated hearts. Some were elated, others hollow with yearning. Many both. They would retell what they'd witnessed. Flash-swirl faces, water lit from within, the sense of hearing laughter with the eyes. But no recounting would fully deliver the moment. Already the details smudged at the edges. Which smile came first? Did the pool glow blue or white? Was the water cold or strangely warm? Only the shared memory of wonder remained constant. Mira walked her grandmother back, umbrella forgotten. Warm wind pushed faint mist across their cheeks, the final breath of the storm. Inside Lyri's kitchen they brewed chamomile. It struck Mira how ordinary everything looked. Tea bags, spoon clinks, low hum of the refrigerator, and yet the night's vision lurked beneath reality's glaze, pulsing like an ember. Lyri set the tiny vial in the centre of the table. In lamplight, the water inside looked unremarkable, clear, still, holding no mischievous glints. Lyri raised it to eye level. "You think it's gone, don't you?" she asked. Mira wanted to believe otherwise, but shrugged. Her grandmother smiled gently, the same smile Mira had watched bloom in the pool. "There's something rain taught me long ago," she said. "Nothing that touches joy is ever entirely lost. It just changes rooms." She pressed the vial into Mira's hands. "Keep this. But don't hoard it. When the moment is right, pour it where it's needed and watch." She would say no more, and Mira didn't press. In the following weeks, Errol buzzed. Local papers ran the story. Skeptics demanded proof, Believers offered attested accounts. Some dismissed the event as mass hallucination spurred by electromagnetic anomalies during the storm. Others called it a God-sent revelation. Mira kept quiet. She saw curiosity tourists orbit the cotton fields, poking the soil for residual magic. None found evidence. The depression where the pool had formed now grew weeds, nourished by that single saturation. They curved green against the otherwise parched landscape, a living yet muted testimony. Meanwhile, Mira carried the vial in her jacket. She felt its small, cool weight during errands, its presence as steady as a pocket watch. She wondered, where was it needed? Should she pour it into the town's depleted reservoir? Onto Lyri's garden? Into the hands of a grief-struck neighbor? She waited for a sign. It arrived the night the factory announced closure. The garment plant had been Aryl's primary employer. Its shutting meant families might scatter like dandelion seeds. That evening, the town hall hosted an emergency meeting. People lined walls, anger crackling. A projector flickered with grim charts. Voices rose. "We're finished," someone yelled. "Why stay here to starve?" Another suggested suing the corporate owners. Another proposed protesting at the train station. But despair underneath every proposition sapped momentum. Mira felt the vial through her jacket, fingers tingling. She looked around at faces drained of hope. Not smiles now, but tight lines, disbelief. Something inside her shifted from patient to urgent. She rose and, without the mayor's permission, stepped to the front. "Last month," she began, "we saw our joy preserved in water. Tonight, that joy is needed again." She placed the vial on the podium, unscrewed the cap, and poured it into the glass carafe the council used for drinking. The water mingled with ordinary tap, swirling minutely. Some people snickered. Others watched with wary interest. Mira lifted the carafe, held it toward the overhead lamp. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a faint glow bloomed inside, subtle as moonlit milk. Gasps traveled the room. Shapes formed within the glass, overlapping, blurred, yet unmistakably smiles, dozens of them, pressing outward like petals against glass walls. The same miracle, miniaturized. The room exhaled. People stepped closer, tears renewed, but softer now. The glow touched their faces, their features relaxed. No one pretended the factory would reopen. Yet the dread that had frozen possibility began to melt, replaced by a fragile readiness to imagine alternatives, co-ops, remote work hubs, community farms. None of it guaranteed, but each idea unlocked by remembering they could still smile. Afterward, many approached Mira, asking how she knew to carry that water, whether more existed. She could not answer with certainty. She only knew the vial was empty. Yet her heart lighter. That night she dreamed of rain pooling in distant ravines, each drop seeding its stored smile into groundwater, waiting. She dreamed of networks of hidden reservoirs beneath deserts and cities alike, joy percolating unseen until coaxed upward by need. Spring arrived unevenly. Drought persisted, but with intervals of reprieve. Whenever rain threatened, townsfolk placed bowls outside. Neighbors compared notes. Did the collected rainfall hold any shimmer? Now and then someone swore they glimpsed a faint upturn of lips in a puddle before footsteps disrupted it. Skepticism remained. Yet so did wonder. Aryl, once defined by what it lacked, water. Jobs became also known for a communal attentiveness. People smiled more readily, aware each one might be harvested by sky and delivered to a stranger far away. They greeted storms as occasions to gift their happiness outward, sending invisible postcards via droplet. Mira continued walking during rainfall, sensing the caliber of smiles captured in each slap against her skin. She kept another vial in her pocket, but never filled it. Instead, she trusted the world to hold its own reservoirs until needed. She would know when to seek them. As for the original field, it never produced another miracle pool, at least not in human witness. Yet wildflowers colonized its shallow depression. fed perhaps by leftover memory nutrients. When wind passed through, the petals bobbed like small faces mid-laughter. Years later, travellers arrived in Arrol not to board outbound trains, but to learn about rain memory pools from the local. Some left disappointed at the absence of scheduled spectacles. Others left changed simply by the way residents spoke of storms, of smiles, of sharing invisible abundance. Mira always met them kindly. She'd guide them through the cotton fields at dusk, telling how water once held the town's brightest moments before sinking away. She'd suggest they listen when next rain pattered against their own windows. Each drop may have visited someone you'll never meet, she'd say. Their happiness travels farther than any of us. Sometimes, on especially still evenings, she believed she could hear faint laughter rising from underground aquifers, echoes of smiles carried down by bygone rains, rehearsing themselves for the day they might surface again, and she felt comfort, knowing that wherever sorrow gathered too densely, some hidden pool was waiting to bloom, to remind those gathered around it that joy, like water, only changes rooms and always, always remembers the last smile it touched.